Okay, let's talk about something pretty much everyone running a team or a business knows all too well. Employee turnover. It's expensive, right? Not
Mhm.
just financially, but think about the knowledge walking out the door, the hit to morale, maybe 6, maybe 9 months of lost productivity, just getting someone new up to speed. High attrition rates, well, they're more than just a headache. In today's talent market, they're a direct threat to your bottom line. So today, we're doing a deep dive into a framework that tackles this head on. It treats retention less like a people problem we react to and more like a system design problem we can actually solve proactively. We're unpacking Quota Pro Leadership's specific approach, something they call the retention architecture. We've got the details on this whole structure. It goes from the kind of philosophical foundation, their North Star leadership methodology, right down to a practical 10-step blueprint. Our mission here is to pull out the really actionable stuff for you, our listener. We want you to understand how you could, theoretically, engineer a culture where people don't just stay, but they grow, and importantly, deliver results right from day one.
Exactly. And you really can't understand the how, the retention architecture itself, without first grasping the why behind it, which means starting with that foundation you mentioned, the North Star leadership methodology. This is central to, well, all of Quota Pro Leadership Solutions, the core idea. Every single business needs to define one overarching guiding principle, a North Star objective. Think of it as the ultimate filter for, every decision, every action, how resources get allocated. It's not just a vague mission statement. It has to be a quantifiable destination. Everyone needs to know what you're aiming for.
Yeah, and what's interesting is how quickly it moves from that high level idea to something very concrete.
Yeah.
You hear about examples, right? Like Airbnb, their North Star often gets cited as nights booked. That really captures their core business. Or Duolingo focusing on badges acquired by language learners. That's a direct measure of engagement and, well, success for their users. But here's a question I always have with these big metrics. How does focusing on something broad like nights booked actually help a manager, sitting down to have a better conversation with an employee they want to keep? That connection can feel a bit tenuous sometimes.
That's the crucial link, and where the methodology aims to connect the dots. The North Star isn't just about the customer outcome. It provides the reason, the why, for all your internal systems. So if your North Star is, say, all about customer lifetime value, then every team inside the company, leadership development, talent acquisition, everyone has to align their work to support that objective. Retention then becomes a necessary piece of the puzzle. It's a measurable activity that directly contributes to hitting that overall North Star goal.
Okay, that makes sense.
And getting that North Star objective right is key. The sources are really clear on the criteria. It needs to be customer-focused, definitely measurable, but also, and this is critical, actionable, your teams, your managers, they have to feel like they can actually influence that number through their daily work.
Right.
If they can't, then it's just a vanity metric up on a dashboard, and that alignment you need just falls apart.
Right. So that sets the stage perfectly for the retention architecture itself. This is presented as part of Quota Pro Leadership's broader suite of solutions, basically the detailed playbook for applying that North Star thinking specifically to managing talent. And the focus is squarely on reducing employee attrition, boosting overall retention.
Precisely. You could define this retention architecture as the deliberate blueprint for designing your leadership processes, your company culture, even your onboarding experience. Everything is intentionally geared towards cutting down attrition and really driving engagement right from the very beginning.
And this is where I think it gets really powerful. It forces a shift in thinking. Instead of retention being, something HR deals with after the fact, this approach frames it as a core business design challenge. It becomes a strategic imperative, something every single leader owns. Practically speaking, what's the biggest hurdle? What stops companies from making retention truly a C-suite, system-level priority?
Often it's about data and, frankly, accountability. Most leaders will say retention is important, sure, but they sometimes resist the standardization, the measurement, the things needed to make it a true system. Maybe they prefer being the intuitive, heroic manager rather than following, say, a standardized operating procedure, an SOP. This framework seems designed to confront that resistance directly, starting right in its first phase.
Okay, let's get into that 10-step implementation blueprint then. We can probably group these into, 3 logical phases. Let's start with phase A, diagnosis and strategy.
Right. Step one is all about establishing the strategic context. You can't fix a problem until you truly understand its scope and cost. So this means getting real numbers, quantify your attrition rates, pinpoint where onboarding is failing, and this is key, explicitly link those retention gaps, to performance metrics, to profitability. You have to move beyond just hearing complaints. You need the hard financial case.
And once you have that data baseline, step 2 is the culture audit. This isn't just asking people if they like the culture. It's a hard look at actual leadership behaviors. What actions get rewarded? What mistakes get swept under the rug? What maybe unacceptable things are being tolerated, even implicitly? You're hunting for those disconnects. The source material gives a good example. A company might say, oh, we value work-life balance, but then the audit finds the CEO routinely sends emails at like 11 p.m. on a Saturday. That gap between the stated value and the lived reality, that's often a huge hidden driver of attrition.
And that leads directly into step 3, mapping attrition triggers. This is pure systems thinking applied to people. You essentially create a visual map of the danger zones across the entire employee lifecycle. Where are people most likely to leave? Is it in the first 30 days? Maybe recruitment oversold the role. Is it around 90 days because the coaching or ramp-up support wasn't there? Or is it maybe 2 years in because good work consistently goes unrecognized?
So you need to segment it. Recruitment, onboarding, maybe the first year, ongoing retention, even the exit process itself.
Exactly. The common triggers mentioned are things like, onboarding breakdowns, a lack of consistent recognition, maybe inconsistent leadership styles between managers. Without that segmented map, you're just throwing solutions at the wall, hoping something sticks.
Okay, so diagnosis done. We know the what's and the why. That takes us to phase B, system design and experience. This feels like where we build the how, designing repeatable systems for a better employee experience.
That's right. Step 4 is architecting the leadership systems. And the absolute core concept here is standardization. Retention often fails when it relies solely on the individual talent or even the mood of a particular manager. That's not scalable, it's not reliable. So you need standard operating procedures, SOPs, for key retention-driving behaviors. How should coaching conversations be structured? What does good feedback look like? How do we standardize recognition practices so it's fair and consistent?
And the sources talk about using systems, maybe even technology, conceptually referred to as standardized accountability, to really embed these SOPs. It's about weaving retention metrics directly into how leaders are measured, into their scorecards, using tools, perhaps, like they mentioned North Star AI conceptually, to help standardize feedback loops. If retention success becomes part of a manager's measured performance, it stops being optional. It becomes a required part of the system.
Then step 5 is where that system design directly impacts a new hire. Build the onboarding and retention experience. This is really about shifting the mindset. Onboarding isn't just paperwork and IT setup. It has to be designed from the ground up as a retention mechanism.
A system in itself.
A system in itself, exactly. And the checklist components they highlight are crucial here. Things like specific activities designed to build trust on day one. Having really robust 30, 60, 90-day coaching plans, not just tasks, but clear developmental goals. And actively integrating peer mentors so that new person immediately has multiple connections socially and professionally.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, that leads us into the final phase. Phase C, reinforcement, action, and measurement. This is where the design system actually gets implemented and, well, lives or dies in the real world. Steps 6 and 7 seem paired, focusing on training and practice. Step 6 mentions retention architecture workshops. And the key seems to be that these can't just be lectures. The framework insists on active methods like role-playing difficult conversations, using decision trees maybe, to simulate the pressure leaders face when applying these new standardized behaviors.
And that workshop learning gets reinforced immediately in step 7, which is coaching. But this isn't just general management coaching. It's specifically training managers on techniques like empathy-based feedback. And critically, it emphasizes providing this retention-focused coaching in real time, not waiting 3 months for a performance review when the opportunity, or maybe the employee, is long gone.
Okay, but practicing in a workshop is one thing. We've all been there. How do you make sure leaders actually do this stuff back on the job when things get busy and stressful? What ensures follow-through?
That's the purpose of step 8, build leadership action plans. It's about commitment and accountability. Leaders use a structured template, an action plan builder, to publicly commit to specific actions. Like, I will model these 3 specific retention behaviors consistently over the next 30 days. Good. They set measurable goals for themselves, and this is important. They have to assign peer accountability partners. That internal, shared commitment helps make the new behaviors stick when the initial training fades.
Peer pressure in a good way.
Sort of, yes. Shared accountability. Then step 9 is crucial for closing the loop. Measure what matters. This is where those systemized retention metrics, maybe something like the conceptual North Star Attrition Index, come into play. Measurement has to be rigorous. You need to track metrics not just at the company level, but broken down by team, by individual manager, and by that employee lifecycle stage we talked about earlier.
That level of detail is what allows you to see where the system might still be weak.
Exactly. It drives continuous improvement. It lets you benchmark properly against industry standards or even just internally between teams.
And then, the final step. Step 10. Share thought leadership. Once you've built the system, you've measured it, you've shown it works. The last piece is to communicate that success, not just internally, but externally too. Publishing insights, maybe outcomes on LinkedIn and newsletters, positioning the organization, perhaps leveraging the fact you used a structured approach like quota pros as a leader in creating a retention-focused culture, which, of course, feeds back into attracting great talent in the first place. It becomes an employer branding tool.
Absolutely. And if we just sort of pull back and look at the whole retention architecture, its real strength seems to be that analytical connection. It bridges that high-level, potentially abstract North Star objective, that quantifiable goal, with very concrete, standardized day-to-day actions required from leaders.
Yeah.
It really aims to shift retention from being reactive, putting out fires after someone resigns, to being proactive. It's about systems engineering for engagement from the very start.
So for you listening, whether you end up using this specific Quota Pro framework or develop your own system, the big takeaway seems clear. You absolutely need that systems thinking, specifically really digging in to accurately map your organization's unique attrition triggers, that's step 3, and then having the discipline to standardize the key leadership behaviors that impact retention, that's step 4. You have to ensure the actual experience your employees have day to day genuinely matches up with your strategic goals around keeping great people.
Right. And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something that builds on this whole framework. The North Star leadership methodology itself emphasizes that your North Star objective shouldn't be static. It should evolve as the market changes, as your business grows. So if your measurement system, step 9 in the retention architecture, those detailed metrics consistently shows failure in a specific area. Let's say, for argument's sake, you keep losing senior managers despite your efforts. You have to ask, is the leadership system itself broken and needing a fix? Or is it possible that the fundamental North Star metric you're aiming for needs to be revisited, needs refining? It raises that challenging question about continuous strategic evolution. Are you treating the symptoms, or are you willing to re-examine the root cause, even if that root cause is the strategy itself? Something important for you to consider.